Hello, my name is Jessica Reilly, and I am the chair of the Medfield School Committee. I'm going to give a little bit of an update on what the beginning of this new school year will look like, some of the results that came out of our school committee meeting last night, which is August 26th, and talk a little bit about what we as a committee and what the schools and administration have ahead of us in terms of challenges and really great initiatives over the next year. So the first one is the big one. Everybody wants to know, what is our reopening plan? I'd like any parents who are out there, guardians, to know that today Dr. Marsden intends to send out an email, so that's August 27th, outlining his presentation from last night, which for reopening. It aligns with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education guidelines, along with some other things that we felt just didn't either make sense to us, could mitigate risk even further, because indeed that is the ultimate goal here, is that we look at our kids, our families, our communities, and our surrounding communities, and we do our best to be responsible with what is essentially ends up being a public health decision for a really large portion of our committee, particularly here in Medfield, where we do have so many kids. So that being said, I'll give you kind of a rundown of the basic bullet points. And if you ever have questions about this, please refer either to the information that the district is putting out and call your building principals. Talk to your child's teacher. If you have concerns, that is always the single best place to go first. So always go to your teacher. And if you have other questions about what happens at a building level, go to your building principal. And then from there, if you have concerns that seem to be at the district level with policy, with budget, please send feedback to us. Or attend our meetings, and speak to Dr. Marsden. Email him. I know he does read all of his emails, even if he probably gets several hundred a day, so it's not that he always returns them personally, but I certainly know that he does read them. We return all of ours to the best of our ability. So, and if you don't hear from us, please reconnect. That being said, I think probably the largest baseline for this year reopening is that although we would have recommended this probably, or supported Dr. Marsden's recommendation for masking through at least the first month of school, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Commissioner, Jess Reilly, went to the Board of Secondary and Elementary Education and asked their permission for support of his masking mandate for all schools in the Commonwealth through October 1st, with a specific goal in mind that that it could extend if it looked as though data trends were not decreasing in the way that it seems that the DPH models are predicting, and that communities that would stop mask use, at least at the 7 to 12 level, for people who can be vaccinated at this point, that vaccination level had to be at 80%. And I think that we had a pretty robust discussion last night, both with Dr. Marsden and with our school physician, Dr. Laura McCullough, about what those parameters might be for our community, and indeed, actually, what is the risk for our younger children if we decide that we can take masks off of vaccinated people. These are ongoing discussions, and I think that the one thing that we really emphasized last night was that any policy, any reopening or opening plan that we put into place is flexible to the situation, that it respects the concerns people have about their unvaccinated children or their community members who are at higher risk, and that we will be really looking at not just what the state has mandated, but once those mandates are no longer mandates, what really works for us as well. And if I have learned nothing else through the 274 written comments and the probably over 40 public comments at our public forum a couple weeks ago, and the numerous emails I've received, there is a wide range of opinions, but I think that we are all more alike than different. And what I have ultimately discovered is that in a community as close and as small as ours, we are really never more than 1 degree away from somebody who does live with considerable risk. And that is something that we have to mitigate, but also understand that we live in a risky world at this point, and that we all love our children and our neighbors so much. And that is the Medfield that I moved to almost 20 years ago. And that seems to be the Medfield that we still have, regardless of what we see on Facebook, which can be rough going sometimes. Just please remember that we're all more alike than we are different. So that being said, we will have masks at least until October 1st, at which point the commissioner will revisit the data and the requirement. We have, in addition to that, kind of tweaked some of the original reopening guidance as opposed to a mandate guidance offered by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which I will now refer to as DESE. So one of the things that came out with the original guidance was something that we just did not feel made sense to us, which was that lunches could be unmasked with some sort of impunity, right? That we would just kind of hit a pause button on anybody being able to transmit anything anywhere. And for 20 minutes, we would ask the virus to take a lunch break at the same time that we did. And so in response to that, in the best way that we can, we will be having, at the very least, Wheelock and Dale, the high school, and Blake eating outside as much as possible. And remember, the mask mandate does not apply to outside, but simply to inside spaces. When that is not possible, we will be having students more spread out into different spaces so that we are not all in each section within the cafeteria. So cafeteria and gym, we'll use separate spaces around. One of the things that came up last night is that Memorial School seems to be a little bit more locked down in terms of right now, whether we want those kids to be eating outside for lunch. And simply because they are so young and there are so many kind of supervisory issues and just the kind of general idea about how to, so much of the first couple of weeks of school for kids who have not been in school, and we do have a really large portion of kids who have not had a kind of normative elementary school year yet for any really long specific period of time, and certainly not within their kind of memory. While we'll be spacing those kids and putting protocols into place, at least for the first period of time, we will probably have them eating inside under very well supervised conditions. And if you have concerns about, again, any one of those things, those are operational concerns that are really best met at the building principal level, and your teacher's level, because they're the ones who have eyes on your child all of the time. They are the ones who have been around and are real professionals and have actually dug in and done this for the last year in many ways. And they are truly the best people to go to about your concerns there. And like I said, this year is a year in flexibility and understanding where we are on a week-to-week basis, honestly. Other key areas that we addressed last night, transportation. So it is a federal mandate that every child must wear, or actually everyone must wear masks, vaccinated or not, on school buses. You'll also notice that that is the case across all public transportation. So subways, the T, planes, we've all been wearing masks on transportation. It's probably just the smartest thing to do. Buses will continue to have their windows open, pretty much regardless of weather, so bundle up. We do not have the same spacing mandates that we had at the beginning of the year last year. So this year, and from what I think it was March of last year, we are able to have more children on the bus, and the bus drop-off will go back to the way it was 2 years ago. So we are no longer having that kind of multivariate drop-off spots. One of the things that's really going to help kids stay in school is that we have found, not just us, but data throughout the state and throughout the country, is that children, as long as they are masked and have had the windows open on a bus, there have not been cases of community spread through close contact on buses. So if there is a case that is identified, or a positive test that is identified, and that child has been on the bus, their seat cohorts, whoever they were sitting next to, behind, and in front of, will not be considered close contacts this year. And that's really about what we have all learned about how this virus transmits. To speak to that, one of the most important things, aside from masks, is also ventilation. And so we talked about that on transportation, but the ventilation in our schools continues to be at the high level it was last year. For buildings that have HVAC systems, we are using MERV 13 filters, which are beyond the requirements from the CDC and from DESE, but we really felt that it was worth it. We have a private company that comes in, switches those out on a regular basis, inspects our air quality, brings and tests it on a regular basis. And we are at an 80% fresh air exchange over the hour. I think we fully, we exchange 80% of our air. Somebody's going to get me if I'm wrong on this, but 5 times over an hour. So the air that your students are breathing is the air that is outside as well. So, and together with masking, that should be helpful. There are 2 buildings that do not have an HVAC system, Wheelock and Dale, surprise. However, we do have intensive, essentially what I'll call air scrubbers, also with MERV filters. And they have, and together with keeping classroom windows open across the district, we have found that there has not been any in-school transmission either. This year, there will not be any plexiglass separations between kids during lunch or any other time at the elementary schools either. Over time, it has looked as though that is really not an effective way of mitigating risk, and it actually can make people overconfident. So we've prevented and prevented and prevented in a layered way. Now, how do we know whether that prevention is working? And that is actually one of the things that is the most important. And I need you to kind of put your listening ears on right now. You will, as parents, you will receive an invitation, which is voluntary but incredibly necessary, and to have your child tested in a pooled test every week through school for free, and the state is funding that for us, which is a great thing. We were part of pilot programs last year. It allowed us to detect if there were cases in school, and it allowed us to really keep kids in school and not have to shut down because we couldn't control community spread, or we were concerned that that community spread would jump to the schools. And it is one of our most important tools. So when you get that form, please fill it out. It is as uninvasive as it could possibly be. It is a simple nose swab that most kids do on their own, and it is not the brain tickler of it's truly a Binex nose swab. Kids literally just turn around, do it, hand it back. It's smooth as butter at this point. And we have been able to bring that down to include K through 12 and all of our staff. When you get that, please volunteer to have your child participate. There is no danger. And in fact, I would say that there is only safety in it. As part of that, one of the reasons I think last year that people were really concerned about pooled testing, of some people who did, is that there was this really pretty onerous kind of quarantining issue for close contacts. This year we will have close contacts within pooled testing. If we find somebody who is positive, there will be people who are close contacts. However, those students or staff or whomever will not be required to go home for the period of time that they might have to demonstrate symptoms, right? Like last year, you could be out for 5, 7, 10 days. We don't think that's good for kids, and we didn't find that it was particularly helpful. But what we can do now, again, is we will continue to in-school test each one of those kids for 5 days after they are identified as a close contact, making sure that we are consistently, every 24 hours, looking to see if that child is in a position in which they have caught the virus and they are in the position of spreading it. And at that point, we can make sure that we keep the ultimate majority of kids in school, because last year the kids that we found as close contacts most frequently did not have the COVID virus. Which brings me to tiny sniffles. This year, and this is on the advice of our school physician, but I also think that this is just kind of common sense parenting in a lot of ways. If your kid who is wearing a mask in school gets the sniffles, a little cough, the sniffles, a temperature around 100, maybe a little above, maybe just a little below, just go get them tested before you send them to school. And I know that you'd think, like for the last however many years of my life, it's like you get a cold, you go to school, you wash your hands, you throw away your tissues. But, there are some things you just have to get through. This is not the time to be teaching how to push through a minor illness that is community risk. So please, I know that it's difficult when you need to get to work, or you've got to call in childcare, or that kid is just so excited to get to school. But if it looks at all funky, testing can be found like this all over, and you can get that test, keep them home for a day, and probably get them back the next day, assuming that they are not COVID positive, and assuming that they have a cold, and then great normative childhood experience. Unfortunate, uncomfortable, but we know what it is, and we keep kids in school. That's the big news. That's the thing that's going to get us into school and keep us in school and keep my kids out of what I now consider our 4-office house. And I have hopefully, not overconfidently, just taken apart both of my kids' offices because I decided I want a dining room and a living room back. On a couple of minor things, lockers are not going to be used at any grade level. And honestly, many of our kids do not carry around books anymore. Life is in your iPad or your Chromebook or whatever laptop you bring from home. So a lot of it is, it's pretty easy to carry around in a backpack. We do not utilize one-way hallways anymore. It wasn't effective, and we are moving closer to normalization. And to the tune of $10,000 a month in cost, and this is not a cost issue, it just doesn't work, and it costs $10,000. We will not be asking high school students to wipe their desks coming in and going out of their classroom. It just didn't work. I mean, it wasn't necessary, and I think the exposure was more concerning probably at a certain point than the amount of time it just takes than any good it might have ever done. We will continue, however, to do the kind of extreme cleaning measures that we do throughout the day, every day. Wiping doorknobs, wiping surfaces, all of the things that our custodians did so diligently last year. In a note of good news, also, free lunch will continue for the 2021-22 school year. So, like I said, if you have specific questions, you'll be seeing a plan come home. You'll see the policy that we enacted last night to support this kind of rapidly evolving kind of level of what we need to do to keep our kids safe. And hopefully by mid-winter, early spring, we'll be saying, do you remember when we used to? All right, maybe it would be too soon, but I'm hoping, right? We're gonna, as I think most experts at this point are saying, at some point, this virus will become something that is a normal part of life and something that you may get but would not be as unfamiliar to your immune system as any other coronavirus that we know of is right now. It's the novel part of this that has made it so dangerous. And the faster that we get it under control and make sure that we stay masked and don't pass it, the faster we will be able to get past this Delta bump, which is really the reason that we are not kind of as footloose and fancy-free as we thought we were in June or July. So there's actually other stuff that happens in school aside from pandemic management. And some of them are really important. This, I would say, is the most important one, which is that we are at the very tail end of the initial design and budgeting process and schematic process for the new elementary school. On September 30th, or the school building committee, which is not the school committee, but the school building committee will be having a town-wide forum on what this means for you, for the town, for your pocketbook, for state funding, where the challenges are, what we understand that there are a lot of people who have not necessarily been following it up to this point. We've been doing this for 3 years now, but not everybody knows. How do we arrive here? What are we doing? This is your blowout informational session. And that will be on September 30th. And you will not be able to miss it. I don't think anybody will. Everybody in town's going to know about that one. I have this funny feeling. And then we think we have a town meeting coming up, a special town meeting. We haven't exactly set the date as far as I know, but in early November, we'll be doing a special town meeting. And should it pass at special town meeting with a 2/3 majority, about 1 week after, we will be doing the ballot vote, which also must pass by 2/3. So that was actually a part of our strategic plan that we called Medfield 2021. And 5 years ago, we developed a strategic plan. And we are at the end of that period of time. And so it is now time for us to start reevaluating where it is that we want to be 5 years from now, and where we can build on the things that have gone right and what we need to support more. And where our values have tweaked or changed a little bit as education and our town has aged this 5 years. So, and we've aged a lot in the last 18 months, quite frankly. So that will be starting probably in January. We'll be working with consultants around that. And that will be a large community process in which we are bringing in focus groups, and we are really talking to not just parents, not just high school parents, not just special ed parents, but community members and arts people who are in the arts, and public officials. And really, this is a kind of a full town evaluation of what it is that we think our schools should focus on to keep our district as high performing as it is and as focused on kids as it is. We also, it is a busy year. We have contracts coming up for all of our unions. So we will be negotiating contracts with the Medfield Teachers Association, both Unit A, which is our teachers, and Unit B, which is our teaching assistants. We will also be negotiating with the AFL-CIO units secretaries and cafeteria workers and custodians. And they've been working on, the custodians and the cafeteria workers have been working on a one-year contract right now through the pandemic, so that we could get to this point and really be able to focus on those negotiations. And they start soon, but the MTA negotiations, I think we're probably looking towards the winter, kind of start that. And we really, I think it's a really nice opportunity for all of us to kind of talk about what's worked and what hasn't over the last several months. It's really in the last few years. And I think we really enjoy the good relationship that we do have with our teachers. It allows us to get both of us mutually get a lot more done and not get stuck, right? When we all know that we're so focused on kids and what the student learning is. So looking forward to those. We have project right now in which we are re-evaluating quite literally every single one of our policies to make sure that it is current and up to the Massachusetts Association of School Committee guidelines. And that is an enormous project. We are calling the first meeting, we meaning Dr. Marston, of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, and that will be in late September. He's going to send that out for the first meeting, and that the task force was picked and notified over the summer. So half of all the applications that came into us. And then last, but oh my goodness, not least, this is one of those heads up things in which we have had this beautiful Gothic dog park and movie theater for the last 10 years, called the Medfield State Hospital. And now all of the reuse planning, the master planning, and everything else is really starting to come to a head. This is kind of where the rubber hits the road. And there are two initial proposals out there right now. They are on the town website. We discussed them as a school committee last night. And I think our greatest concern is that no matter what happens up there, we need to have accurate and vetted financials and accurate and vetted potential student numbers, which as well as a sense of timeline about if there should be a number of children who may need to be enrolled within our school system. How do we do our best to plan for that over time, to bring that into our long-term plans and also our short-term plans? So as a committee last night, we decided to offer that as our feedback to the plan. But public feedback for either of the proposals, which are very different in terms of size, scope, and money, is due by September 3rd. And my latest understanding from watching the selectmen's meeting a couple of weeks ago when this was discussed, and this could be updated from now, is that there was a real push to bring the sale of the state hospital property to a special town meeting. It's going to be a heavy winter for special town meetings. Bring it to a special town meeting in November as well, and then a vote, or perhaps December or January, depending. So it is not somewhere on the horizon anymore. It's here. And if you have opinions about that, I urge you, not just for our kids, but also for our town, to really consider what it is that's being proposed and whether you support one, the other, or neither of those, and give that comment by September 3rd. And I also know that both of those organizations did presentations and that they are on the Medfield TV YouTube channel. But we will be responding to the proposals with our concerns around no matter what happens. All right, so I think that that's enough for the first, 5 days of school. It's going to be a big year. There's going to be a lot of changes, but as my very wise mother-in-law has always said, the only reality is change. And as very wise Glennon Doyle says, we can do hard things, and we will. We always have. Thank you.